Bueno, gente. Comenzamos directo. Espérate que no veo. Voy a compartir el canal por... ¿Cómo es esto? ¿Cómo lo debe compartir tú? ¿Dónde está esto? Editar perfil. No, aquí. Pillo el directo. A ver si se me oye. No es, me cago en la puta. Vale. Se me oye bien, así que copio vínculo. Me voy a Twitter. Si encuentro la aplicación de Twitter. Y mientras tanto voy cambiando la escena a la del juego. Me parece que estamos cerca del final, gente. ¿Dónde chuchas tengo Twitter aquí? Madre mía, tercer directo del día, tú. Y último. Espérate. Espérate. Esto me ha puesto directorio en lugar de directo. Pego el vínculo, el link, tuiteo y estamos ready, gente. Continuamos donde dejamos en el directo anterior, en el cual no sé si me mataron o directamente ya por algún motivo la pelea duraba hasta ahí y a chupar. Me cago en la puta, ya la he liado. Ya la he liado, un momento. Vale, ya está. Vale, perfecto. Ya está todo arreglado. Vale, le damos, ¿eh? Nos dieron un logro llamado la batalla final. Algo así. Y parece que apareció Hela de repente aquí. Insisto, no sé si me mataron como tal, ¿sabes? ¿Tú qué eres? ¿Tú quién eres? Espada. La espada no me la toques, hija. ¿Me la das o te la tengo que quitar de las manos tú? Imagínate por un momento que todo esto es una cinemática de cómo he muerto. Sin más. Y ahora respawneo y tengo que volver a pelear. Y todo el lío este. Ocurra la escena simplemente para que sea por morir. Hostia, no voy, hermano. Joder, me cago en el puto internet de los cojones, hermano. De verdad, que no puedo. Mira, tomar por culo. Sea como se tengan que ver en el directo, esto ya lo arreglaré algún día. O sea, mañana. Está grabando, por lo menos. Bueno, la chavala ya está mal. Ya está fatal, la chavala.
Is that what you want me to believe? After all you've done to me? And to him? You're not a lie, but you're a liar! You crawled into me to confuse me and deceive me. But I know it's him. I know you have him.
Dame la espada, chaval. Nos dejamos a puñetazos aquí, Se resuelve por un duelo muerte a cuchillos. Con cuchillos, a cuchillos, ¿sabes?
I'll give you my life. That's what you want, isn't it? My soul. Take it. I'll be a slave for you. I'll fight with you at Ragnarok.
Pum, un cabezazo de repente, ¿te imaginas? Me meto con la cabeza del tiro, ¿no? Y ¡pum! Es una tía, tío. En plan, tiene tetas. Hela, que yo recuerde. Sí, era mitad viva, mitad muerta, pero... Joder, mitad viva no sé si eso es viva,
But if you won't, you will have to kill me. Because I've got nothing left. No fear. No hate. No quest. Nothing. And you will have no power over me.
Que me ha pillado el cuello, tú, que me mata, de verdad. A tomar por culo. Claro, yo que lo pienso ahora no tengo armadura, ¿verdad? Pues sí, con el espérate que ahora resucito como siempre. Voy con el ropa así sin más. No tengo armadura. Me cago en el puto internet de los cojones. Pero de verdad no funciona hoy, no sé por qué. ¿Quién me está chupando el wifi? Ojo que no resucito, ¿Eso qué es?
I learned the hard way to not be
Hostia.
afraid of death, Senua. Because a life without loss is one without love. You turn your back on death, and all you can see is the shadow that it casts.
No sé, demasiado realista el Diro en comparación con Senua'S, ¿no? No
The
fumada
longer
mía.
you hide from it, the longer the shadow grows until all you can see is darkness. When our time comes, we must look death in the eye and embrace it as a friend. Only then can we let go of our fear. And emerge from our darkness.
Pero estoy. ¿Me han quitado las tetas? Sí, ¿no? Ah, no. Lo primero que se fija bajar, a ver, lo traes de nuevo o te lo llevas. Una de dos. Pum, le corto la
Never
cabeza a Hela
forget
ahora.
what it is like to see the world as a child, Senua. Every autumn leaf is like a work of art. Every rolling cloud a moving picture. Every day a new story. We too emerge from this magic, like a wave from the ocean, only to return to the sea.
¡A tomar por culo! Conche su madre. Ay, usted que pego. Pego que flipas el abuelo.
Goodbye, my love.
Do not mourn the waves, the leaves, and the clouds. Even in darkness, the wonder and the beauty of this world never leaves us. It is always there, waiting to be seen again.
Se terminó, ¿no? Bueno, no sé si se terminó. ¿Están riendo de fondo las hijas de puta estas? Que viene el bicho, de nuevo. ¿O no? Tengo la que... ¿Tengo las marcas en la piel o no? Yo estoy flipando ya.
This is where my story once began. And so it has to end here. Because I cannot see further than this.
Follow us. We have another story to tell.
My friend, go with her. This now will be your story to witness. Goodbye.
¿Hay un cadáver ahí? ¿Lo veis, no? ¿Hay tiro en el medio? ¿Dónde es esto? ¿Qué ha pasado? Al final sí estaba loca el chaval del todo. Gente, no me puedo creer, 11 minutos de directo y termina ya el juego. Me esperaba 20 minutos, media orilla. No, joder. Hemos terminado Senua'S, no, Hellblade, Senua'S Sacrifice. El sacrificio de Senua. Está guapo el juego, está guapo. Está guapo. Ahora, ¿qué ha pasado al final? ¿Sabes? En plan, bueno, me despego de Dillon. Ahora, ¿cuántas cosas de las que yo he visto era real? ¿Y qué es lo que había tirado ahí que parecía un cuerpo en medio? Este tema tiene un copyright que flipa. Me hace raro esta elección de la banda sonora, ¿sabes? Como que no... Como que es raro escucharla en una historia de la época de los vikingos. Bueno, los vikingos, ¿sabes? Los hombres del norte. De la mitología nórdica, no sé, qué raro. Está guapa, pero como que queda extraño. Bueno, ahora ¿qué hago yo? Dejo el directo cuando termine los créditos y me pongo a hacer otra cosa. Me pongo a jugar un ratillo a lo que sea. Yo qué sé, puedo poner aquí... No sé. A ver, el directo seguro lo corto cuando termine los créditos y vea si hay una escena por créditos o algo. El 2 seguro lo jugamos cuando salga. Segurísimo. Bueno. Si sale en Game Pass, segurísimo. Si no, está más que el tema. Soy pobre, lo siento. El juego está muy guapo, está guapísimo. Y el 2 yo creo que va a ser más guapo todavía. ¿Es exclusivo el 2? A ver, voy a buscarlo. Senua... ¿Cómo es? Hellblade 2. Claro, no se llamará Senua'S Sacrifice, ¿no? Porque el sacrificio de Senua aquí fue dejar a su marido, supongo. Lo que yo he interpretado. Es Hellblade 2. Plataformas. A ver. Tiene un copyright. No. Ah, coño, que no tengo. Que no tengo conectado el internet aquí al momento. Así normal, que no busques tú. Fecha Xbox. Vale, parece que va a ser exclusivo de Xbox y PC. ¿En Steam no sale? Microsoft Windows. Senua'S Saga Hellblade 2. Ah, estaba hecho en el Unreal 5, ¿no? Yo estaba pensando, ¿pongo el tráiler aquí del 2? Pongo el tráiler, es que me la juego, hermano, en verdad, ¿eh? Voy a intentar hacer una cosa. Me va a picar el PC, hermano. Lo digo yo. Mientras tanto, Hellblade 2. Trailer. Es más gordito, ese no es el 2, ¿no? Es en plan, tiene la cara más pequeñita. Yo me creo que está escuchando el. Coño. Pausate. Hostia, que se está petando esto seguro.
Hi, my name is Sora Kim, and I'm an illustrator.
Un curso de doméstica, me cago en la puta. Espérate. Ya, sin música, bueno, pues nada. Pillo esto. Vale, pillo esto. Pongo esto. Vale. Vale, esto fuera. Espérate. ¿Qué lo haría? Si desea averiguar más sobre psicosis y otras dificultades de salud mental, visite www.hellblade.help.info. Estoy buscando una cosa. Me da miedo que no me puedo creer. Estoy viendo una cosa mientras. Que me da miedo capturar el coso de este. Creo que lo tengo ya. ¿Me puedo meter copyright por reaccionar aquí? Bueno, reaccionar, ¿sabes? Por poner un tráiler. Quiero ver el tráiler. Ahí está, el 2, a ver. El PC de momento no se me ha petado. Senua. Joder. Gente. Presentación de Hellblade. Vamos a ver esto ahora que estamos. Advertencia. La siguiente presentación contiene spoilers. Recomendado mirar luego de terminado Hellblade. Senua'S Sacrifice. Vale. Ninja Theon.
She's dreamt of this before.
Editado por Melina Jurgens.
They say dreams are visions of our memories,
No mira la calidad de esto, ¿no?
fears, as seen by our inner eye.
La primera vez que nos hemos cagado frente a la
Each
bicha
one of
esta.
us is always dreaming,
Profesor
even
Paul
when
Fletcher.
awake.
Profesor Charles Fernie, no sé qué.
And we
¿Qué
only
le pasa al
see what
internet,
our
su puta
inner
madre?
eye creates for us.
Mañana intentaré configurar esto para. Bueno,
Is
mañana.
this what
Sí, mañana lo
happens?
intentaré configurar y a ver cuándo hago directo de nuevo.
World
Porque
shaped by
hasta el
Senua'S
miércoles mínimo
nightmares.
está chungo el tema.
Maybe
Mañana
that's why
seguro
people
grabo.
fear seeing
Si es
the
una
world in
alegría.
our eyes.
Seguro grabo terapia mañana.
Because if you believe that Senua'S reality is twisted,
Bueno, esto es cuando
you must
nos
accept
parten la espada y la madre.
that yours might be too.
Hellblade. Senua'S Sacrifice. Hellblade. Senua'S Psychosis. Si esto no está subtitulado en español, lo quito,
Hellblade: Senua'S Sacrifice is a video game about Senua, a Celtic warrior on a vision quest into Viking territory. But what sets our hero Senua apart is that she suffers from severe psychotic mental illness.
He knows she's getting closer. He can feel her coming closer. She's getting
The original idea for Hellblade was to create a classic hero's journey, a journey of suffering, but one where the fantasy world is not another planet or alternate universe, but
Qué guapo ese bicho,
a
hermano.
world that is constructed in Senua's mind. But to do so would mean putting psychotic
Tío,
mental
está todo
illness
diseño
at the
guapo y no hay
center of
ninguno
the
aquí en el juego.
experience.
O
A
sea, de
subject
estos.
that is still considered taboo, and a challenge that was both terrifying and exciting in equal measure. In Hellblade, the starting point was a newly discovered Celtic goddess called Senuna in Ashwell, Hertfordshire. When first discovered, her name was thought to be Senua, a name which I liked and kept. I wondered if Senua might have been a Celtic warrior like Boudica, who stood up to the Romans. While the Romans had conquered all of Europe, there was a group of Celts up in the furthest reaches of the Roman Empire that could not be conquered, the Picts.
Vale.
And so the Romans built a wall, called Hadrian's Wall, that spans across Britain from sea to sea to keep the Pictish barbarians at bay. The Picts were known for their war paint, painted on with woad, and their matted hair clumped with lime. And so Senua would be a barbarian Pict in this image.
What's your name?
Senua.
Senua,
I haven't seen you before.
I don't live home much.
Te está viendo como el culo en el directo,
Senua'S
hermano.
daughter.
Pero bueno, hasta que se termine, después ya me da igual.
Wait.
Orkney is off the coast of Scotland and was inhabited by the Picts, steeped in history and mystery, and so I made Orkney Senua'S home and set the stage for a crisis. In the late 8th century, the first Vikings landed on the Orkney Islands. The population of the Picts crashed thereafter, replaced by the Norsemen of the 9th century. Were they wiped out? We don't know for sure, but it would seem likely given the reputation of the
Que
Vikings.
esta mujer no es vikinga, tú
The
me acabo de
Northmen's brutality is legendary. High-ranking leaders and chieftains of the tribes they conquered were often offered as sacrifice to their gods.
Creo, ¿no?
The
Porque,
most
bueno,
brutal of these sacrifices was known as the Blood Eagle. I imagine Senua as a young female warrior who returns home from exile to find her partner, Dillion, brutally sacrificed to a Norse god by these hellish warriors from a faraway land. I imagine the horror of this moment and how it would have dragged her deep into mental torment.
No!
ya no sé qué
I
decir,
came to learn that the Celts had a sophisticated and nuanced perspective on the nature of mental disorder. One term they used was Gelt. A Gelt is a man or woman who has been driven mad by a curse, battle trauma, or grief. The Gelt would take to a life in the woods in search of penance, punishment, and purgation. And so Senua
Como está
became
picando
a
la espalda el
Gelt,
bicho.
cursed by darkness, looking for redemption in the wilds. Another word the Celts used in reference to mental disorders was truth, meaning fool, or liar, one who utters the words of God. They tell of the mad sinner who flees battle into exile and takes on a beastly nature, growing feathers on his body. The character called Truth in Hellblade is based on a little-known person called Findan, an 8th century Irish Celt who was captured and enslaved by the Vikings, but eventually escaped to Orkney where he became a monk.
I will tell you my stories of hell, if I may walk with you.
Upon meeting Senua, it would be his stories that fuel her quest deep into their world of gods.
The Northmen say the world
El
will
North,
come to an
ay,
end.
joder mucho. El juego, ¿cuántas veces han dicho de North?
The earth will sink into the sea, the stars will disappear, fire and water will meet, flames will play against the sky, the heavens and earth and all the world will be burned, all the gods will be dead, and the warriors of Valhalla.
En verdad, debe ser este como un spoiler de la hostia, ¡Ay, el fierro!
Prepare yourself for Ragnarok, for it is nigh.
So the stage was set for a new adventure, a journey into the Norse underworld called Hell, a vision quest fueled by madness and myth, a fantasy that was created by Senua's own mind, and one that we would experience through her eyes.
This is your mission. This is your quest. There is nothing else left.
To make a game about a warrior with psychotic mental illness as its central theme was fraught with danger. Mental illness, such as psychosis, is still taboo and rarely acknowledged in a century of cinema, never mind the new medium of games. Where it does feature, it often conflates psychosis and psychopathy associated with a lack of empathy. It is unfortunate that these two words sound so similar that they are used interchangeably in media. I must admit that I didn't have to look very far to discover my own ignorance of the subject. So we reached out to Paul Fletcher, psychiatrist and professor of health neuroscience at University of Cambridge.
Psychosis is a descriptive term, and it refers to having a loss of contact with objective reality. So it's characterized by two main sets of symptoms. One of them is hallucinations, where somebody experiences perceptions when there is no actual objective thing out there to perceive.
You're already dead. Who are you?
And the other is delusions, where somebody comes to very often bizarre, unpleasant, frightening beliefs when there's no good evidence in favor of them.
There's no doubt about it. The source of the darkness is in
No,
his
no
heart.
estoy spoilando todo el juego aquí. Se han pasado.
The
Se pasó con los spoilers tú.
holds his soul there.
We reached out to Welcome, a biomedical research charity that spends billions on research and awareness programs aimed at improving health.
Mental
Oye, han
health
puesto
has always
subtítulos
been
con que veías en
presented in
tal
media a
tiempo.
way that is particularly helpful. It can be challenging to engage people with the subject matter, and there are a lot of preconceived ideas about mental health, and particularly schizophrenia and psychosis. So we hope our support allows the team to continue to collaborate with Paul Fletcher and with those who have experience of psychosis to create a game that provides a fresh perspective on the condition and allows audiences to engage with it in a way that just wouldn't be possible in any other medium.
What started out as a brief consultation convinced me that we were only scratching the surface of an immensely deep and interesting subject that could enrich and change the very nature of the game.
That's cool. Thanks so much for coming here.
Pleasure, thanks. It's really interesting for me. I'd love to be involved. I think it's fascinating.
Our understanding of psychosis is still very much a mystery, and ways of treating it are still primitive compared to physical illness. After all, it is easy to see the pain and suffering caused by physical diseases or physical trauma. It is not so easy to see the mental suffering and trauma of severe mental illness. But what if we could
puede
find a way to
manifestarse
see
en cualquier momento,
it? Games
o
are
también puede ser
capable
que
of
nazca con
drawing you
ello.
in for hours on end, playing the role of a character who is different from you, experiencing their perspective, and actively involving you in a world that functions with a different set of rules.
Puedes hacer con psicosis o manifestarla a una edad más o menos
If we were
avanzada.
to represent Senua'S psychosis, we would have to simulate voice hearing, a common attribute. But how can we simulate something we have no first-hand experience of? Professor Charles Fernyhough, a leading expert in voice hearing from Durham University, offered his help.
Hearing voices is an experience that is usually associated with severe mental illness, and crucially we know that hearing voices is a part of ordinary life for many people who don't meet the criteria for mental illness.
Yeah. Oh, that's not him in real life.
We know voices vary according to where they appear in space. Voices can appear far away in the distance, they can appear right there in your ear, they can seem to be coming from inside your head.
Based on the information Professor Fernyhough provided, I put together a sound brief and invited some actors to the studio. We recorded the actors using a binaural microphone, which records the 3D spatial position of sound, replicating the way sound is heard by human ears. It gives you an incredible sense that the person you are listening to is right there beside you.
Se lo habrán pasado pipa haciendo esto, por lo que se ve.
Rachel Waddingham from the Voice Collective came to our studio with 2 young voice hearers to speak to our team. We talked at length about their experiences, and they listened to our tests, giving us feedback on how we could improve on it.
Everyone hates her. She's cursed.
It's very hard to represent what this experience is like, partly because it's such a personal, intense, emotional experience. It's testament to how Ninja Theory have been listening to what the researchers are saying, but also crucially listening to the experts by experience. What they've come up with is so compelling. It's by far the best representation I've heard of what these experiences are like.
Other common attributes of psychosis are visions and flashbacks. We met with Recovery College East, who work with and care for people recovering from severe mental disorders. Group service users gave us their first-hand accounts of what they experience.
Sometimes when the vision or what we're seeing is too much, it becomes more difficult until eventually we perhaps don't see anything.
The people we spoke to, the stories they told, were fascinating, harrowing and mind-boggling. The reality of what people experienced was vivid, far exceeding what I could possibly have imagined. We went away itching to represent some of these visions and flashbacks in the game.
Hands feel now, my heart is so, love is so far away. Don't you know how I wanna feel deeper? I could never know.
Everything is in bits like photographs.
Now I see deep in me insanity does unfold. I just wanna feel deep.
No sé qué significa,
just wanna feel deeper, deeper.
Imagínate que en la batalla final empieza a escuchar esta canción. No te quedas flipando.
As we all know, my
When the moon
heart
will
is
be
so love is so
finally
far away.
to my mind.
Don't you
No sé.
know how I wanna feel
Me encanta que lo leo, pero no sé ni qué significa, ¿sabes? Es impresionante. I often say waves and illusion of the world. I make me feel nauseous. Sentir náuseas. Al final no sé qué significa todo el resto. At times there's nothing for like switch off. Eso lo podría haber subtitulado, por ejemplo.
To refine our work, we continue to hold meetings with Recovery College East over the course of a year and a half, showing them what we had achieved so far and refining the in-game representations based on their feedback. With their help, flashbacks, visions and changes in perception were woven into the story and gameplay of Senua.
The students that are involved in this project are incredibly excited about being involved. They have described the experience as being important because it values their lived experience and shows that despite what we have been through, all of that experience becomes valid, that actually it's something that we should all be talking about.
The experiences described range from beautiful to frightening beyond comprehension. I heard of a girl who has to live with an angry voice screaming at her, slamming on her doors and walls 24 hours a day. I met someone who would often see hanging corpses in a room, so real that she would sometimes try to rescue them. The panic and fear that comes with such visions is entirely understandable, and it can be a living horror for some.
Worthless, weak, pathetic. Go on, feel sorry for yourself, because there is no one left to do that for you.
I was urged by one fellow that we should not shy away from showing this horror, and so I was perpetually torn in making Hellblade. Had we gone too far with our representations or not far enough?
Broken.
El fierro no. El fierro no. No te des el fierro.
Just like your sword.
¿Puta madre? ¿Qué pasa? Ah, claro, que lo dejo quieto media hora.
In some ways, voice hearing and visions were the low-hanging fruit, so to speak.
Señor, a ver los subtítulos aquí.
There's another aspect of psychosis that is much harder to explain, but one that I think video games are uniquely able to represent, which are often called delusions.
People begin to see patterns in the world. They begin to link things that most people wouldn't link. Most of the things that we might think would be coincidence or, you know, not worth commenting on. Nevertheless, that might have a particular salience or importance for them.
One individual described how everyday words, sounds, colours and objects were steeped in meaning to him, forming a strange and sinister puzzle that he was determined to solve but could not quite get to the bottom of.
It's not just brain dysfunction. It's not like the system shut down. It's actually an incredibly creative process. The person creates a world populated with voices and phantasms and terrors, and they're completely immersed in it. They believe in it.
We often invite people into the studio to play the game. In one of our playtests, they played through much of the game, making associations between runes, secret messages, and the threat of darkness that stalked them. There are many things that happen in the world of Hellblade that make perfect sense within the context of Senua'S mind. The dark rot that's killing her slowly from within, the secret runes of the gods that block her path to Helheim, and strange associations that exist in the game to confuse you. To complete Senua'S quest, you have to internalize and accept the logic and meaning behind these things to progress. Afterwards they said that they didn't see much evidence of mental illness in the game. People with delusions of all sorts would argue the same thing, that they are not aware of their experience being abnormal in any way.
I need this sword. It's important.
Representing perception changes and thinking patterns within Hellblade gives us a set of symptoms common in psychosis. But people with lived experience were keen to emphasize another point, that it is wrong to define a person by their symptoms. Quite often, the illness comes not from the symptoms, but from the stigma, isolation and mistreatment that comes about from the rest of society.
They say that I'm cursed. What if they're right?
Los subtítulos están rotos.
I needed someone to portray Senua, someone who could believably internalize her suffering.
You fooled me.
Melina Jurgens, our video editor, had been a stand-in for Senua over a few months while we perfected our motion capture techniques. Without realizing it, she had already auditioned for the role, and I knew her well enough to know that I didn't have to teach her to act, but to relive her own internal pain. As often is the case, those who have suffered mental anguish are never far from us.
No puedo, me hace gracia la imagen de izquierda, tú.
My hope is that by creating a compelling and aspirational character in Senua who feels very much real, albeit in a fantasy setting, we can provide a lens into her reality, a different one to yours, and this is where storytelling comes into play. I imagined her life based on common threads in real people's lives. She was always prone to psychosis as a child. Her mother Galina also heard voices and had visions, so perhaps there was a genetic aspect. Or perhaps it was cultural, as she lived within a world without science, of gods and a superstition, as exemplified by her druid father Zimbal. Psychosis developed in her late teens to early 20s and was exacerbated by stigma and isolation at the hands of the clansmen and her father.
This darkness. It's spreading.
Ah, vale.
The trauma of seeing her love
que si lo
opinion
desarrollo
sacrificed
no
tips
nací
her
con eso.
over the edge, making her remodel her reality around a concept that connects everything. The darkness. So the question is, what Senua experiences real? Can only be answered by saying, yes, it is real. It is her reality.
All of her suffering will have been for nothing. It's just a matter of time.
Vale. Ahí está la respuesta. Hubiese sido más épico si hubiese escuchado la voz de fondo,
Towards
pero
the
claro.
end of the project, service users and
Título rojo.
professionals that had collaborated with us
Sí,
were
es
invited
real.
to see the new
Es
final game.
su realidad.
It was a chance to see if the game had reflected their views or if it had misrepresented them.
For me, being involved in especially developing Senua'S character has been really important, and being able to bring in my perspective and what I see and what I hear, and having that built into the game has been a real privilege. It's gritty and it's meaty, and there are some tough subjects in there that are being tackled with honesty.
I was blown away by it today, absolutely blown away. It was just
Qué
fantastic
ganas
to
del
get the
12, en verdad.
opportunity
Bastante
to
ganitas.
use our lived experience in a very creative way. There's nothing tokenistic about the work we've put in. It feels like we've been listened to, things have been taken on board, and I think there was a lot of realism in the game itself, and it feels very authentic.
Hellblade will give people a good experience of what it's like to hear voices and have those experiences. I'm glad that
Los
the
artes
guys
del
at
juego,
Ninja
¿sabes?
Theory
Los conceptos están muy
kind
guapos.
of asked us to come along and help them build an experience that's positive when it comes out, and get myself a copy and have a go.
Claro, esto lo habrán puesto, lo habrán estrenado en
All
algún
the
lado.
way
Hostia, que te tiro el
through,
portátil.
I was really inspired by how the conversations have
Esto lo habrán
translated
puesto y
into
lo
the
habrán,
game
para que alguien lo
in a
vea
way
antes del
that I
juego.
think
Bastante
I
gente,
didn't
supongo.
imagine was possible, so wonderful.
Se habrán
really
comido unos
wonderful.
spoilers, tú. Me flipas, hermano.
I really hope that others will follow the lead they've set and use the power of something like a video game to change people's perceptions, to increase understanding, and ultimately to make some of the stigma around voice hearing and other experiences go away.
For me, it was really exciting to see something
Hostia,
that
Dylan
I
ahí.
explore
¿Qué pasó, hombre?
scientifically being represented so beautifully in a character who's trying to penetrate the mysteries of the environment in which they've been placed, with all of this strange uncertainty and noise and conflicting information that they're getting. I'm very excited by this way of trying to represent mental illness, because I think it actually might be offering us insights that we wouldn't get from pure scientific explorations, and actually giving us quite an empathic view of what it might be like.
Mental illness has been with us for as long as we have been on this planet, but why? Why hasn't evolution stamped out this weakness from within our gene pool? I often pondered this question until I realized that the question had an inbuilt flaw. It assumes that being and thinking differently is a weakness. The only reason we have computers, spacecraft, medicine, poetry, art, and yes, even video games is because individuals were able to simulate new abstract realities in their minds and share them with the rest of us. We need people to be willing to see differently in order for us to progress and survive as society. And we need to be open to these new ways of seeing. And it is this spirit that motivated me to create Senua'S story and share it with you.
Qué guapo, tú. Guapa la idea. Qué bonito. Juro que no sé qué decir aquí. Yo estoy flipando con esto. Ah, vale, esto es lo que pone al final del juego. ¿Vale? Supongo que aquí termina el documental este. ¿Cuánto me he tirado aquí? ¿20 minutos? ¿Más o menos? Y ahora lo que voy a intentar, esto va a salir muy mal, va a ser... Captura. Captura de ventana. Aceptar. Vale, ahí creo que lo estáis viendo. Ópera, vale, aceptar. Le doy a esto, vale. Y voy a reproducir el vídeo. Ay, perdón. Espera que creo que se está petando el PC. Si esto va un poco lag, lo siento, pero es lo que hay. Silencio la capturadora de vídeo. Me quito yo los cascos y se los pongo al PC, que si no, no lo oigo. Vale. Ahí estamos. Vale. Quiero confirmar si se oye esto. Se oye perfectamente. Ok. Pongo esto en el principio y le damos. Espérate que le he dado algo. Espérate. ¡Ah! Estoy enseñando lo que no debería, espero que no. Se ve un poco mal, lo siento, pero es lo que hay. Cantando tú. Sí, se ve muy bien el tráiler, ¿eh? No, espérate, ese tráiler no es en plan... Esto no es hecho en un real, ¿no? Bueno, esto sí. Esto creo que sí. Pero esta... Bueno, igual sí también. Creo que sí. Dios. Ganitas, en verdad, ¿eh? Sí, esto está hecho en el juego, creo, ¿eh? Sí, sí, sí. Lo dudo por un momento, pero sí. Senua'S Saga. Hellblade 2. Gente, voy a evitar esto. Xbox Series X. Esto va a salir en... Espero que salga en la normal, en la One. Si no, es un tema para mí. Captura de ventana afuera. Y, gente, hasta aquí. Espero que no me tomen el vídeo por poner el tráiler. Pero que no, la verdad. Hasta aquí el... Coño, que se sigue escuchando aquí algo. Un juego NFT. Un tráiler de un juego NFT. Salió. Gente, hasta aquí el directito de hoy. Por fin hemos terminado Senua. Me había olvidado que estaba esa opción de ver el documental, así que mira, para el último momento salió bien para extender esto un poquito más, si no, tenía que ser otra cosa. Gente, hasta aquí este directito. Yo creo que podemos despedirnos con algo de musiquita, en verdad, ¿eh? Algo de musiquita guapa. A ver, yo qué sé, voy a buscar algo. Espérate, ¿cómo es esto? ¿Qué música puedo poner, hermano? Algo chulo, tío. Yo qué sé. Esto, a ver. Creo que no lo vais a ver vosotros, pero yo sí, sí. Esto no. Igual otra cosa, si no. En plan. ¿Qué puedo poner? Estoy pensando. Esto, a ver. Vale, aquí. Esto está dividido en capítulos, ¿no? Joder, qué buena puta. No está. Vale, sí, aquí está. Esto, a ver. Este. Este no. Buscando este. Este no. Este. No. Este no. Este. No. Este. Es que. Espérate. Hostia, me he hecho daño. Vale. Aquí a lo mejor me sale. Estaré flipando aquí cada uno. ¿Este? No, este no es. No. Esta creo que será. Bueno, esta no es. Este seguro que no es. Bueno, ahorita, ¿eh? ¿Esta? Vale, tengo silenciado el escritorio, menos mal. Que te cae, niño. Vale, esta. Gente, yo me despido y os dejo con este temita. El del final de combate, coño. Mira los tirones que me habrá pegado esto aquí, pero bueno. Gente, nos vemos.